All right, greetings, everybody, and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is November 22nd, 2021, and I think this is the anniversary of the JFK thing, if I'm not mistaken. So happy anniversary to everybody that's doing their JFK shows today, because it seems to be all I'm seeing on my YouTube feed. Is, it gets a little old. Every single year we do it. I mean, I get it. I get it. I do. It's just not me. I mean, I guess I'm just not interested in it. I don't know. Whatever. So welcome to Conflict Radio. Let me give a shout out here to everybody that's hanging out. I see Arlene Adkins-Zell is here. Vash Wolfwood, Dr. Strangelove, the Happy Plague Doctor, Sapphire Elf. Welcome, Sapphire. How is everybody in Australia doing? I see Will Carr here. Let's see. I guess it's not going back. Apex here is here. Blue Chicken, Not Quite Human. How is everybody doing? I guess that's everybody that we've got in here so far that's at least commenting. Today on the show, we're going to have Reverend Peter Panagore on. He was recruited to TV as the fifth minister of America's oldest religious broadcast. Peter's 2-minute spot aired for 15 years just before the morning weather on NewsCenterMaine on 2 NBC stations, reaching 80,000 viewers a day. Previously, Peter served in New England as a United Church of Christ minister. His Audible Best Seller, Heaven is Beautiful, has been optioned for a film. His first book, 2 Minutes for God, is a non-denominal devotional drawn from his 1,700 TV stories. He's working on his third book now, built around his talk, and provides mentoring to spiritual seekers worldwide. Peter, welcome to Conflict Radio. How are you today?
Hey, Michael, thank you for having me. I appreciate you inviting me to your show.
It's been it's been quite the week for you. I guess that your father recently just passed.
He did.
I want to send my condolences, and all the listeners, I'm sure, are going to be very sorry to hear that, and hope that I guess you're able to kind of move past that, and I guess that's life, right?
It's life. He was 91 years old, had 3 very hard final years, and now is free and whole, healed and well. And I miss him.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about your experience. Now, you went ice camping with a partner of yours on the world-famous Lower Weeping Wall, right, in the Ice Fields Parkway in Alberta, Canada. Can you tell us about that and what happened to you?
Sure. We were ice climbing for a day, having spent about 8 previous days snow caving across the border in British Columbia at Mount Assiniboine. We came back for a 1-day ice climb. I was a novice ice climber. My climbing partner, was a certified lead climber. I'd been rock climbing and technical climbing for a number of years. I'd just never been on ice before. But I'd been a winter camper and a winter backpacker since I was 12 years old, and I was on the National Ski Patrol and was a regular winter outdoors person. So when I came up short one piece of equipment, I got an axe and a hammer instead of 2 axes. We decided to go ahead with the climb anyway. So I had all the gear that I needed except for 1 axe, and short an axe using a hammer made our climb significantly slower, which ended up putting us in mortal peril.
All right. So when you say axe, you're not talking about like an axe to chop wood with. You're talking about like that axe claw that you see people climbing up like ice cliffs with and stuff, right? Like that.
Exactly. It's an ice axe. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yep.
All right.
And a hammer, just like the axe, only it's about 1/3 of the size. And the difference between the two is one's actually made for climbing, the other one's not. But you can use it for climbing. You just can't ever let go of it. You can't rest with it. With an ice axe, you can actually set the axe in the ice, and with a strap system that's attached to the axe, you can relax your grip and not use your forearm and bicep the whole time. You can just relax and kind of dangle on the axe with an open hand, with the strap holding onto your wrist. With a hammer, you can't do that. And so the result of that is that I burned out my muscles pretty fast, which slowed us down a lot.
All right. So what happened?
So long story, very long night, short.
So you were stuck out there for the night?
Yes,
Were
we
you?
reached the top of the climb. It was a day climb, and I want to be sure that everybody understands that. So nobody on the climb that day brought overnight gear because it's a day climb. Nobody brings overnight gear on a day climb. And so we made this day climb, and when we got to the top, it was sunset because I was a slow climber because of the hammer, and the temperature dropped about 30 degrees. This is the middle of March. It's 1980. It's the middle of March. We're a day and a half drive from the Arctic Circle or something like that. We're north of Banff, south of Jasper. For those people who are in Canada, they know where that is. It's very, very cold and very isolated. And so when the sun went down, the temperature dropped 30 degrees. We watched the other teams stomp out to the Ice Fields Parkway, which was within, we could see it. And our hypothermia set in almost immediately because we were dressed for the day, not for the night. And we were out of water, we were out of food, and we were supposed to be down. And that began a very long night. Immediately, within a minute, we knew that we were in a desperate situation, that it was most likely death waiting for us. And that's a crazy thing to realize when you're 21 years old, that you just made the biggest mistake of your life and there's nothing you can do about it.
So did you? I guess was there snow around? I suppose. I mean, was
There
was
about
there
10
any way
feet
for
on
you
the
to
ground.
dig like a shelter or something? Or?
Yeah. Yes, we did that the week before. But where we were on the cliff, there was no snow. It was just ice and rock because the wind had blown all the snow off of the. It's almost a vertical climb, and so there was no place for snow to accumulate. It was no way. We discussed. So we're sitting on the top of this climb, and the sun goes down. A bazillion stars come out. It's stunningly beautiful. But our jaws begin to clatter. Our bodies begin to shake with. They felt like seizures, but they were shivers. Their whole body was being shaken with shivers on a micro muscle scale. So everything was twitching. And my climbing partner, Tim, hauled up the rope. It was a double line, 150-foot line, and it became a 300-foot knot because we were scared. And so the first thing we had to do was untangle the rope. And by the time, as I untangled the rope, because that was my job, we discussed what we were going to do. We thought about snuggling, canoodling, body to body up against the rock face, which was right behind us. But we realized pretty immediately. Like I said, I was on the ski patrol at the time. I was at Bridger Bowl in Bozeman, and we've been learning a lot about hypothermia that winter. And I knew that we were never going to survive. We were already too cold. We didn't have enough body warmth between us. So the only chance we had was to start moving and try to keep on moving and try to get off this mountain and back down to the ground where we had our tent. And Tim owned this tent. It was this great tent. It had a chimney and a vent. It was a super high-end winter tent where you could actually run a stove inside the tent and heat the interior of the tent, and the carbon monoxide would go up the chimney. So we had warmth waiting for us if only we could get to it. So we decided that we were going to die. And if we were going to die, we were going to die trying to get off of this mountain. And so that's what we did. I don't know how long it took me to untangle that line, but I started getting frostbite. I want to make it clear to all your listeners, I still have all of my digits, but all of them are damaged. I still have all my fingertips and all my toes, but I can't feel my big toe on my right foot. And that's just an example. But I took off my gloves in order to untangle the line and started getting hypothermia almost immediately. Frostbite in my fingertips almost immediately. It eventually got to the point where, everything on me was frozen. It was so cold that I couldn't move my lips to talk. It was very difficult. And we decided to conserve our energy for walking and for thinking and for acting, not for any unnecessary discussions about anything or any unnecessary movements, because our energy supply in our 21, I was 21 years old. I had no fat on my body at all. So my body, if it was going to survive, it was going to have to start consuming itself because I was totally out of energy.
Yeah. Now I've been in the cold before. I used to live in Colorado. I used to live in Vail, and I got stuck going over a mountain pass, and I had no heat in the car at all, and it was like minus 40 degrees, and I'm all by myself in the middle of the night, and there's no heat, and I've got to have the windows open or it won't frost, and I could swear that my eyeballs were freezing. And
Oh
and
yeah.
and for anybody that doesn't know what that feels like, that's very weird. Did you sense that at all? Like your eyeballs were actually freezing?
Oh yeah. And my brain.
You can feel
It
that.
was
It's weird.
it's scary.
So what happened? Did you die?
I did die. Long story short, the whole climb was, I review the whole climb in my book. But I'll shorten it up by saying that it was 3 rappels to get down, and we had a series of mishaps on every rappel as we tried to struggle our way down the mountain. And every moment that went by, our hypothermia increased and advanced, including loss of coordination and loss of cognitive function and ability to speak or coordination. Our coordination started failing on us, and so many hours go by, and we continue to fight our way down. We finally get to the last rappel, and now it's sometime before dawn. It might a couple hours, might be 4 or 5 hours. I don't know, because I didn't have a watch on, and I was too busy trying to stay alive. But on this particular spot, and I should tell you, Michael, that in 2016 I went back to this place.
Yeah.
And I faced my trauma, so I have a pretty good view inside my head of what the place looked like. So on the left hand side of this climb, about 150 feet up, there's a ledge, and there's a ledge. It might be, I'm going to say, 9 feet deep and maybe 15 feet wide, something like that. And it's sheer at the edge, sheer drop down at the edge, and it goes into the mountain about 9 feet, and then it's sheer up again. And so there's this place to stand. And at this place to stand, there are 2 iron pins pounded in permanently, probably epoxied into the mountain with O-rings on them that are iron. And there's a carabiner on each of them, and a nylon strap to each of the carabiners, and a carabiner on the end of the strap, so you can click yourself in. So for the first time all night long, Tim and I were locked in to our harnesses to the mountain without fear of falling off the cliff. So all night long, not only on top of all of this hypothermia and frostbite and descent, we were at risk of falling the entire time, because we were getting number, literally number, as the night went on, with making compromised choices. We weren't in our right minds half the time. And so we're finally clicked in, and Tim's to my left. And at this stage, the hypothermia is advanced. My feet are frozen blocks of ice, like you get down at the grocery store in the summertime to throw it in your cooler. Just like I can't feel my feet. I can't bend my feet. My lips are frozen. My brain is frozen. My eyeballs. I thank you for bringing that up, because I don't think I've ever talked about that before. Because how do you explain that to somebody?
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's literally one of the weirdest things. It's like your eyeballs start to freeze.
Well, because they're made out of liquid,
Yeah.
And they're sitting right out front. It's not a lot of it's not a lot of insulation with those eyelids, and so we're clicked into the mountain. The moon had risen. By this point, the moon had, like a 3/4 moon had risen. It had been dark most of the night, lit by starlight, but still dark. So the moon is up, and I can see off to the mountain range across the road, which is the Saskatchewan. So it's at the bottom, 150 feet down now, is maybe 70 yards to the Ice Fields Parkway, where there's a parking lot on the other side of the parkway, and then the Saskatchewan River, and then there's another mountain, and it's beautiful. It's like really, really beautiful. And so I'm clipped into the mountain, and my hands are frozen, my body's frozen. I've advanced to the stage of my body gets hot, which is not real. My body really didn't get hot, but it sure felt hot. And so I unzipped my coat, and of course Tim got mad at me for doing that, but I didn't care, because I was hot, and it makes hypothermia more rapidly advance. I took the line. Tim was to my left. I was to the right. I took the line, and I tied off one end of the line to my harness, and I took the other end of the line, and I tossed it off around the corner, because there was this corner crag sort of descent area that we had just come down. I had to throw the line out around this corner in order to be able to pull my end of the line to retrieve it from the O-ring, which was 150 feet up. And so I pulled on the line, and the first pull, it jammed somewhere. Like I didn't even get it 6 inches, and the thing is stuck. And now no matter how much weight or pull I put on this line, it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and I can't get it free. And Tim couldn't help me. There was the danger of dropping if I untied the rope for him to grab a hold of it, the danger of dropping the rope would have meant sure death for us, 100%. And as it was, we weren't quite at 100% yet, because we still were awake, and I still could pull on the line. But every time I pulled on it, it got jammed tighter and tighter. And so my coat is open, my temperature's dropping. I begin now I fall asleep. And before I fall asleep, I should tell your audience that I knew it was it. And at this point, I knew it was over, and I resigned myself to my death. I accepted. I'd been driving myself all night long with willpower of survival. I felt like I was tapping into the most basic part of my human brain, the part of my human brain that'd been around for hundreds of thousands of years in early hominid development, where survival was the thing. You survive. And all night long, I was driving myself to survive. That was all that mattered to me, survive. And I reached this point where I understood I wasn't going to survive. And at that point, I relaxed, and I started looking out at the beautiful mountain and the beautiful stars, and I started thinking about my family, and I started thinking about my death. And my sister had vanished. My mom and my dad were heartbroken for a decade from this, and I thought, I'm going to end up taking another child from my parents. It's going to destroy them, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I just accepted it. I kept pulling on the rope, but I knew I was dead. And so at that point, I began to fall asleep, and I would fall asleep and my legs would collapse. I would black out, essentially. I would, if you ever get so tired that suddenly, like, you ever have a kid and you get this little kid and the kid's all upset and suddenly their eyes are closed and they're out?
Yeah.
Yeah, just like that. I'm awake and then I'm out. And I'm asleep, and I collapse, and I have a helmet on, and I land down on the ledge, and I smack my head on the ledge, and I wake up, and I pull myself up, and I yank on the rope, and I repeat this process a bunch of times. I don't know how many. And so then I stand up, and as I stand up this last time, I open my eyes, and I have tunnel vision. And so all around on the peripheral of my vision, and this big circle was blackness all around my eyes on the outside. And so as I looked around, it was like I couldn't see, like if I stuck my arms out to my sides, like I'm doing right now, and if I look straight forward, I can see my fingertips. You know how that works. If you ever did that when you're like in third grade, stick your hands out to the side. Well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't see where my hands were. And this darkness began to close down on me rapidly, like a stage spotlight in reverse. And it was like the darkness was closing in on me super fast. And as I looked around, I was confused. I had never seen such a thing before, and I didn't understand what was going on. And as I looked forward again at the mountain right in front of me, it went to black. And when it went to black, I remember thinking, I'm passing out. Only I didn't pass out. I was awake, and I was in darkness, and I thought, why am I still conscious? And what I was just confused, and I wasn't in pain anymore. And then suddenly this darkness that was in front of me, where this darkness had closed in on me, this darkness, and everything's going to sound like paradoxical from this point on, because everything I say is in metaphor, because there's no language to describe this. And secondly, there was all this paradox all the time. So there was this darkness, only it wasn't like when you go into a room and you close all the shades and you close the door and you shut off the light and you can't even see the hand in front of your face because it's that dark. It was that dark, only I could see. and I could see almost to infinity. And way far in the farthest distance of infinity, there was a pinprick of light that appeared at a phenomenal distance from me. And it was very tiny, but superiorly bright. And as soon as I could see it, it rushed toward me like faster than the speed of light, because the distance was so great. It was impossibly coming toward me at this speed. And as it came toward me at this impossible speed, it communicated to me directly without language. And right inside of me, it said to me without words, "I'm taking you." And as it came to me, it filled my whole horizon. And I didn't have any idea what was going on, but I had enough presence of mind to think to myself, I don't know what this is, but you're not taking me. So I took all this willpower that I had built up all night long through my survival instinct and put it up like a shield in front of me. You're not taking me. And it just reached through like it was made out of candy glass and plucked me out of myself and I had no agency. I had no power to resist. It just took me, and I was taken, and I was then, and so I was in the state of resistance. I was in a state of well, I don't want to say fear, because I wasn't afraid. I just didn't know what was going on, and I just didn't want it to take me. But suddenly I was without any power whatsoever, and I was inside of this entity of light, this energetic intelligence that was all powerful, that took all of my power. I had no control over anything but my thoughts. And I was inside this thing. And as soon as I was inside, I was hearing inside myself comfort, love, welcome, relax, joy. And I was swept up through the proverbial tunnel, only it was like more like I guess an elevator shaft, but a clear glass elevator shaft, because I could see in every direction. I'm inside this entity, and I'm sort of still in an astral body. I still have some of my Peter form to me, and I can see myself from the outside inside this entity, and I can see from inside myself looking out through my astral eyes into this infinite darkness as I'm swept up. And directionally, I say up, but it's distant and far and faster than the speed of light. And suddenly, I am popped out into with an infinite darkness that is illuminated. And when I say it's infinite, I mean in every direction there is infinity, and there is nothing in it at all. There is nothing for infinity. There are no stars, there's nothing. Only I can see farthest I've ever seen before, and it's illuminated darkness. And I am an entity. I am no thing, and I'm in a place of no things. I'm in nothingness, and yet I have form, but I have no molecules. I am an energetic ball of consciousness that is self-aware and self-reflective, and yet I have my thinking and my seeing and my feeling and my understanding and my sensing. They're all one thing. It's not like I'm having different inputs. Not like when I touch my finger on my desk, I feel the tip of my finger with my finger. It's like my whole soul feels, my whole soul sees, my whole consciousness is understanding, my whole consciousness is comprehension. And I am 10,000 times bigger than I was as a human being. And I think to myself, this is me. This is who I am. This is who I have always been. How did I not know myself? How did I forget myself? This is myself. And I could see like I had 10,000 eyes looking in every direction at once. Or I was a single eyeball that was capable of seeing in every direction at once. And I was completely unafraid, content, and at home. And I describe what happens next in a sequence of events, but it's timelessness. So everything happens at once. There is only timelessness. There's not this, then that, then that. It's impossible to describe. But I have spent my whole life trying to figure out how to think about this and talk about it. So here we go. So I am this energetic ball of consciousness inside of an ocean of infinity, and there are no things here. There's no molecules, so there's no skin, there's no bones, there's no rock, there's no nothing like that. It's just energy. And I am contained energy. I am not the size of infinity, but I am much larger than I was. And as I am there, content with myself, an opening, a portal, a door, a gateway, whatever an opening could be called, appears. I'd say in front of me, but I had no front. To one side of me, this opening opens, and it's ginormous. It's much bigger than I am, and it's flowing like a fluid, like pearlescence, like a waterfall, and it is transparent and translucent and solid at the same time. So I can see the surface of it, I can see the depth into it, and I can see through it all at once. And it's luminescent, and I can see through it, and I see another tunnel, and I know that I'm invited to go this way. I just know this, and so it's the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And so I felt compulsed. There was like a compulsion in me of desire, of wanting to touch this. And so I reach with myself to touch it. And as I touch it, it becomes life. It becomes all living, and it flows inside of me like water. It fills me with this all livingness, this all beauty, love, truth, knowledge, understanding, expansion, and it fills me, and it fills me, and it fills me, and I'm awash in this, and it speaks to me. And it says to me my name, but it's not Peter. It's the essence of the origin of the birth of my soul self, of my consciousness. I see the origin of myself in relationship. I see that I am creator, creature made by creator. I see that I'm like a single photon of a septillion times a septillion photons, and all of these septillions by septillions make up the divine self, and the divine self is all consciousness, and I am birthed out of it, and I am made of it, but I am a reduction of it, infinitely small in comparison to its creative infinity. And I know that I am beloved, and I see my soul that is lengthy and I don't want to say eternal, but almost eternal, because it's everlasting. And I see all these different lives that I had lived or was living, because I'm in timelessness. And it wasn't just on Earth. It was all these other dimensions or worlds that I can't comprehend now, but I can sort of see glimpses of. But they're so distant to me. But they were slivers of myself. The ocean of my soul, these were mere droplets of sand in the ocean of my soul. Not one of these lives was me. I am this created creature. I am this called into being soul by the word of the divine, by the breath of the divine. And then I have this life review. And the life review I have of my life as Peter, I go through all of the suffering that I ever gave away in my life. All of the pain that I ever caused in my life, I experience it from the inside of every single person, and every single moment of pain that I ever caused. I am inside that person, and I am experiencing the pain that I am giving to them. And as I give it to them, I feel their immense pain, and it's 10,000 times greater than the pain that I thought that I was giving them. And simultaneous to this, I experienced the rationalization and the reasons and the causations of my wanting to give them pain. Like I feel the pain inside of me, the hurt inside of me, wanting to hurt them, the anger, the madness, the jealousy, all these things. And these two things were in juxtaposition to each other, because the pain that I wanted to cause them was little compared to the immense pain that I did cause them. And I could also see all of all the pain that I gave them, I actually gave to myself. It all attached to me. And then this voice that was the ocean of love itself that was inside of me and around me, but I could not see it, was speaking inside me saying, I love you. I made you. I know you. I've always known you. Nothing of you is hidden from me. I made the universe in its flawedness, in its limitedness. It's not your fault that you were causing pain to people. I love you as you are. I love you because you love. I love you because I made you. And all this love infilled me. And I could see that the universe itself is made from unlimitedness as limitedness. And as limitedness, it has flaws in it. And those flaws are designed into it, you could say, built into the system, and not my fault that I caused people pain, although I made the choice to cause pain. The structure itself was filled with the potential for causing pain. And the voice kept saying, I love you, I know you, I made you, I forgive you, I love you. And I could see all of the love that I had been given in my life, and all the love that I had been given away in my life, and all that love sort of attuned my ear. And when I finally began, I was judging myself as guilty through all of this. I caused these people this pain. And as my ear of love began to attune to the voice that was speaking inside me, as I began to listen, the love infilled me, and I was utterly forgiven and filled with an expanding peace, love, joy, wholeness, healing, understanding, wisdom, knowledge, adoration, awe, bliss, paradise.
Did it first off, that was beautiful, man. Did you feel like you had more knowledge?
Infinite. Anything I wanted to know, I knew. It's crazy. I have this desire to understand cosmology, astronomy, biology, chemistry, engineering. I want to know everything about how the whole thing's structured. And in an instant, I knew and understood. And what I knew and understood was limited compared to the infinity that was still beyond my grasp of my capacity. But I understood so much more. Anything I wanted to know, I knew, and I wanted to know everything. But of course, I couldn't bring it back with me.
I mean, were you able to, just know things about life? Like, did OJ really kill that girl, or, you know what I mean? Like stupid things that, we always wonder about in life that we wish we knew the answers to.
They all became immaterial, Michael. None of them mattered.
None of that matters.
None of them mattered at all to me, at all, because they were material, and material just was immaterial. It's perishable. It didn't matter. It was all beauty, all good. None of that stuff mattered at all to me.
So did you see hell at all?
Oh, I went through a hell of my own making. That's what I was describing. I've described it since as the purgative fire of divine love. Basically, I suffered all the sins that I caused in life, and those sins were with the wounds I gave to others with intent.
So you felt all that.
All of it. And it was torturous. But it also was this cleansing thing that happened. I went through self-judgment, and in my self-judgment, I listened to the voice of the divine forgiveness and love and mercy that overwhelmed me and showed me compassion. It was hell. I even in my book I call the chapter, I think I call it hell. It was the hell of my own making, my own hell.
Now that's interesting because a lot of religious people think that there is no hell. We kind of all go to the same place, and that would make sense. That as we die, what you're describing sounds like sort of like a drive-through car wash for the soul.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, good analogy.
Right, like Like you go through and you clean off all of the I guess the earthly things, right? And before you
Yep.
can move on.
All my attachments, all
So
the things, I'm a big fan of Charles Dickens, and I'm sure everybody has seen or read A Christmas Carol, at least most of your audience. And there's this scene where Marley comes to Scrooge and he says, "Oh, these chains, I forged them in my life link by link." And those are his attachments, the things that weighed him down. And I got cleansed of all of my attachments, all of the things that I couldn't bring with me. Every joke that goes about heaven, the guy shows up with a wheelbarrow full of gold and you can't bring it in, You can't bring things with you. And the things I couldn't bring with me were all the attachments that I had to suffering. I couldn't enter into the divine presence with suffering. And once my suffering was relieved, suffering was gone. It was as if suffering had never existed for me. It wasn't like, oh, my arm's not broken anymore. Thank God I'm not in pain. It's like my arm had never been broken and there never had been pain. That's what it felt like. And I expect to go through it again, Michael. I don't know that I will go through it again, but I'm cool.
You think it'll be less as hard this time because you've kind of already gotten your first rinse?
Well, I was only 20 years old. It's been 40 years since, so I'm sure I've been fairly human all the way along since then.
Yeah.
I know that I've accumulated some other chains that I've forged around myself. Although I live consciously. I mean, it's weird. I came back with this. I know that that's my fate, and so I'm always living with that knowledge inside my head, making my actions, trying to live my actions out of not that. But I'm okay with it because at the end of my near-death experience, I got a promise to come back to the divine being. So I'm totally whatever I have to go through, I'm good with it.
All right. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Toward the end of your experience, were you given a choice? Could you come back, or were you fighting going?
I was given a choice, and I don't know why I was given a choice. I just was. And what happened is that after I had there's this expansion where I'm in what I describe as a state of union, of oneness of being, where infinity is still beyond my grasp of understanding, but I can see that infinity exists. And I am so filled in with the oneness of being that my soul self, my consciousness expands. It's like in Dr. Seuss with the Grinch, was the Grinch's heart grows 10 times larger. It's like my self grew 1,000,000 times bigger in the expansion of the divine presence that infilled me like a balloon, to the point at which one more drop of bliss, I felt like I would have been obliterated, and I welcomed it. I wanted self-loss. Full self-loss, but it ended, and I sort of shrunk back to size with this glowing ember of divine oneness still inside me. And I said, "Am I dead?" And the voice said, "Yes, you're dead." I said, "Well, I can't die now." And the voice said, "Why?" And I said, "Because my sister had vanished when I was 14. She had run away, but we didn't know that. And my mom and my dad had broken, and the family was fractured, and I couldn't take another kid from my mom and dad." And when I said that to the divine, I was instantaneously swept. So when I gotta try to clarify this. I'm having this conversation with this voice with a capital V that I can't see, that is this universe that I'm in. The divine isn't like this individuated thing, although it individuated itself for me. It was the entire infinity. I'm inside of God. Inside of heaven is God, and God is heaven in my experience. And it somehow made itself smaller to communicate with me. And as I said, my mom, my dad, etc., it grabbed me and swept me across the breadth of heaven, this infinite illuminated darkness, and brought me to the edge of our universe, and sort of poked my cosmic head, like my consciousness, outside of heaven, so that I could see the extent of the universe I could just see. hundreds of thousands or millions or billions of galaxies. And then my focus was brought, I'm like a puppet here. Okay, so I'm not making any decisions. It's just showing me stuff and I'm paying attention. And it draws my vision across the universe through our galaxy into our star system and down to Earth. And now I'm just looking at Earth, and it's this three-dimensional holographic projection with every single human being on it. I can see 7 billion people all at once. Like I can see through the earth and see every single person, and every single person's doing every single thing that every single person was doing at that moment. 7 billion people doing 7 billion things, that everything imaginable, and all these different countries and languages, and there's oceans and mountains, and every single human being has a speck of gold dust in them. And this gold dust is the divine presence. And everyone, the whole earth is covered over with this foam, this foam that I can see through, but they can't. And the voice says to me, in the way that I love you now, and I am shown love that is, I can't describe it to you. It was all the love that there ever had been, will be, and is of the divine self, not human love, but infinite divine love that always was, is, and will be. All of that was shown to me in an overwhelming understanding of infinite love. And the voice says to me, in the way that I love you now, I have always loved you, and I have always loved every single person. Then I could see the divine light in every single person. And because of my divine love, the voice says, all was well, is well, and will be well for everyone. And I could see my parents in particular, and then I could see my parents' faces up close in particular, and I could see their suffering in front of me of their lives without me. What would their lives be were I to die? And at the end of that, the voice says to me, they'll be here in a moment, in the wink of my eye, because the length of a life is the snap of a finger. That's how long I could sense the divine's understanding of my human life was. And I knew that that was true, that my life was that long. And that in that amount of time, my parents would be dead and in the oneness of being. And so you can stay, the voice says to me. You can stay here. They'll be here in a moment. But I could also see what their lives would be if I were to go back. And that they would have less suffering, not no suffering, but less suffering. This one thing, the loss of a second child, would not happen to them. And I said, I haven't gone all the way into the divine yet, have I? And the voice said, no, you haven't. And I said, well, then can I go back to my life? And the voice said, you can't go back to your life, but you can go back. And I said, well, can I come back here? And the divine said, yes, you can come back here. And I said, well, then I choose to live my life. And the voice said, you won't live your life, and sent me back.
So what happened? You kind of just like woke up on the side of the mountain, hanging from the rope still?
I became rapidly more material. Like I was jettisoned out, and as I sort of took on more and more form, there were I had a million like tunnels in front of me to choose from. I had to make a choice. The voice said to me, choose. And there were all of these openings that were gateways back into my life, but I had to pick one. And I remember thinking, I want to be sort of a bohemian writer, spiritual person. And that was the gateway that I entered. And I saw all of the probabilities of all of these lives. And I saw all of the probabilities of this one particular life that I chose. And I went down this tunnel, and as I got closer to my body, I became denser and denser and denser, thicker and thicker and thicker, and I felt like I was being crushed down into a smaller and smaller and smaller ball of matter, and shoved and twisted and stuck back inside my physical body. And as I came to inside my physical body, I had no idea what was going on. All I knew was pain. The first experience I had upon my body waking up was suffering. And suffering had been forgotten. there was no suffering in heaven. I didn't know what it was, and it was awful. And after a period of time, my brain sort of came back online, and I felt this thing that I was in, because I didn't understand who I was or where I was or what was going on. And this thing that I was in was shaking, and I heard this noise, and pretty soon I'm being pulled up, and I stand up, and I'm standing, and I don't understand my legs, and my eyes are open, and I don't understand what I'm seeing. And there's this thing in front of me, and it's screaming at me. And finally language starts to form, and I see that it's Tim, and I hear him. He's screaming at me, "You were dead. You were dead. If you die, I die." And he was crying and tearful, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't understand what was going on. And pretty soon I began to be able to formulate words. And he told me to pull on the rope, and I pulled on the rope, and the rope came free. And we descended, and we went to the tent, and we treated ourselves for hypothermia. And the sun came up an hour or so later, and we got in the car, and we turned on the heat after we brought our body temperature back up inside the tent in the sleeping bags, and drinking hot tea. And then I was never the same person ever since.
Did you try to explain to him what had happened right away? Did it take you time to?
No. No. I didn't know what happened to me.
Yeah, you kind of had to process everything, right?
And he was an atheist. And so we had this agreement, because I was a spiritual guy. We had this agreement. Tim and I, we didn't even know each other before we took this trip. We met through the outdoor club. We found out we had compatible skill sets. It turned out we really did. And he was a great guy. He was super level-headed and very skilled. And what he didn't know, I did. It was great. But we had agreement, no religion talk. It was actually the thing that I learned the most from Tim, besides some ice climbing, was about jazz. We listened to a lot of jazz on this trip. My first time diving into the world of jazz, and we never talked about it. I didn't talk about it for 20 years, Michael. I kept my mouth shut.
Do you still talk to Tim?
No. So on the ride home, exhausted, I totaled his car, and we parted poorly. We shook hands in the end before we left. We partied each other, parted ways permanently. But
just kind of threw the keys at him, like, "Thanks for the ride, dude. See you later."
Well, he was pretty pissed off at me. And I was on a theater company, and so we parted ways. And I was in this Montana State University theater company, and I left almost immediately on a 3-month tour. So we never really saw much of each other ever again.
All right. So, what do you think about codes? I see here something about Jesus was a code switcher.
Oh yeah. So codes, what code switching is? It's a way of, so I live in Maine, and in Maine, people speak French. A lot of people speak French, and they speak English, and they have Franglish, and in other parts of the country they have Spanglish. And basically, code switching is when you speak two languages simultaneously, keeping in the syntax of the proper language that you're speaking. So you say a phrase in French, and then you say a phrase in English, and both of them are grammatically correct for their language, but you mix them together. Open the door, s'il vous plaît. Two languages, two syntaxes. And Jesus was speaking metaphor. All mystics, and the Lao Tzu, Chuang Tzu, Rumi, Hafez, Kabir, Meister Eckhart, Julian of Norwich, Richard Rolle, all of them speak in metaphor. It's the language of mysticism, because you can't ever use, because there's no language in the place of non-being. And so Jesus was always code switching. He was always speaking in metaphor. And I think it's the fundamental misunderstanding of theological scholars who don't understand that. He switched back and forth all the time between speaking what I jokingly call angelic and seriously call Aramaic, because he was actually speaking in Aramaic, but he was also speaking in this metaphorical language of the angels that went right over the head of most people. And so he was all, you are the light of the world. What was he talking about? You carrying a flashlight or a torch inside yourself? No, he's not. Everybody kind of gets that one, except for that they don't really understand it, that you actually are made of light. that the divine light itself is you. And when he says you are the light of the world, and he means it. We are light in the world. But everybody's like, is it an oil lamp? Is it a flashlight? No, it's none of those things. Does that kind of make sense?
And I'm guessing that this is a quote from your book. It says here, I asked to go back and was told you won't live your life. I was given a choice of 1,000,000 entry points. I could have entered the direct beam of white light, but I picked entry just off to the side to maintain my sense of self.
Yeah.
The after effects include living displaced in time and space, accelerated, heightened, and many mystical experiences, and lots more. Could you explain that to us? Like, what do you mean?
You just said a mouthful.
Yeah. What do you mean 1,000,000 different entry points?
Well, in the very center of all of these, I can describe it to you like an old cable bridge where they would take singular, maybe they're like 3 millimeters of a single steel cable, and they'd wind them together into a bigger cable, and then they'd wind a dozen of these together in a much larger cable. And if you cut off the end of it, it's like 1,000,000 different little tiny butt ends of single steel cables. It's sort of like, looks like that, only they're openings. And all of these openings have all of the possibilities and probabilities of lives that I could have chosen to live inside my body. And in the center of all of these was the divine, like laser light itself, white, pure light that radiated right through the center of this and sort of diffused out to the outer edges of it. And I was offered the choice to go right into the middle of the light, but I didn't want to do that because I wanted some autonomy. I wanted some selfness. And I don't know why I wanted selfness, but I did. And so I chose this. I remember thinking, spiritual writing bohemian kind of lifestyle, whatever that meant, because I was 21. Okay. And that's what happened. And so I got to choose the kind of life I was going to live, but I was never going to live the life that I was going to live before I died. My life ended that day, and I came back a different person. When God said to me, you won't live your life, I didn't understand what the divine meant by that. I kind of had to live into it and understand that my life as Peter, previous Peter, was completely over. And that new Peter was just an entirely different person, and that I had picked a path for myself of probabilities, not and my choices that I've made in my life have made them actualities, but I always have had this choice. I could choose left or I could choose right. And if I chose left, I would change the probabilities of my future. And if I chose right, I would change the probabilities of my future. But what I learned in the long run was, it didn't really matter whether I turned left or whether I turned right. What really mattered was whether my heart and soul and mind were set on the divine love itself. And as long as I've lived my life with trying to empty myself of myself by setting my heart, soul, and mind on the divine presence, then every choice I make helps me lean more deeply into the light and leads me back to that center beam of light. And
do you think it's possible that you picked a dimension?
Oh, I definitely. What do you mean? I want to know what you mean by dimension before I answer.
When you say like you cut the cable and like the cable's like it turns into like 1,000 pieces of smaller cable, right? And you're kind of picking one to go to, right? Like,
yeah,
you kind of pick the one to the left or to the right, maybe not towards not in the center, but on the edge, right?
Yeah.
Could it be that each one was a different path? You know what I'm saying?
Like a dimension, yeah.
Yeah, like a dimension.
And not only that, Michael, it's not just so I live this now. This is my lived experience is experiencing what that is. And all around me, there are 7 billion people having the same experience, but most of them have no idea. that every single choice they make creates the reality in which we share. We share this reality. Their decision impacts me. My decision impacts them, and we sort of move together in this organized chaos. And in all of these probabilities that pre-exist, that become actualities through our choices. So it's not like my choice to go left or to go right created the reality. It's that the reality already existed, and I made that particular reality an actuality. I don't know how to describe it. It is. I love this meme. I've seen this meme. Huh?
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. The dimension that you were in, you died in that dimension. You just went back. You picked a dimension to go back into that you actually survived this experience, and that's the one that you live today.
Yes.
Oh, that's just fascinating. What would you say that the number one thing is that you learned?
Love.
Love?
Love is the key. Love is the key for every single human being, no matter who you are or where you are or what you are. You love a puppy dog, you love a kitty cat, you love your mother, you love your wife, you love your child. Love is the treasure. Always was and always will be. And it doesn't matter doesn't matter what your religion is. When I was dead, there was no religion. There was no old man with a beard. There was no Christianity. There was no Judaism. There was no Islam, no Zoroastrianism. There was none of that. There was only divine love and beauty. And it was so far beyond human understanding and capacity of grasping. I mean, I can't even, I have this memory of it, this connection to it that is sustaining to my life. But I can't ever put my finger completely on it. I just know that what matters most is how we love each other. That's it. And love is complex. It's not simple. It's a lot of gray area in love. You know, when I was in high school, I was in love with two girls at once. And I had to pick one, and I loved them equally, but I picked one. And I hurt the other person because I picked love. And so here's this circumstance where love is this gray, amorphous thing, where because I love one person, I hurt another person. So it's not always clean. It's just always right.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, you up for some questions?
Sure. I've been looking at the chat over here on YouTube, and it's been interesting. But yes, I'm up for questions.
They can get really creative in chat, but they also have some great questions, guys. I guess now's the question time. If anybody has any questions for Peter Panagore, go ahead and put it in the chat box, and we'll get to asking them. I do want to ask you guys to like the video because it does help get more people and more viewers, and it helps the channel. Again, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, hit the notification button so that you know when we go live and you can participate in these live shows. I guess what we're going to do now. So while they get going on their questions, guys, fill it up. And let me ask you about your soul name that no one can speak, showing me the origin of my being like a singular photon separated from the all light and the everlasting length of my soul. What can you tell us about that statement?
Well, I can tell you that ever since I've come back, I still hear the calling of my name inside myself. But it's not language. It's not human language. It's this constant, you know, I like the Eye of Sauron and Tolkien, which is the evil eye, of course. But in this case, it's not the evil eye, but it never shuts off. It's always inside of me, always looking at me, always calling to me, always present to me. And so I'm always aware of my soul self, my higher self, my consciousness, my true self. It's my eternal self. I live in this life as a person who is, and I just lost my dad. Okay, just the other day, and it was 3 years of very terrible misery for him, and it was hard to go through for all of us, particularly for him.
Did you and him talk about this experience?
it was hard for yeah, hard for people to believe me or understand me.
Well,
And so
surely your
I
parents
gave up. I
believed you.
gave up long ago trying to convince anybody of this. I don't really care if people believe me or not. Doesn't. And my dad was a great man and a loving man. And but he really had a hard time with this, and now he doesn't. I kept telling him, Dad, you're going to find out. It's going to be great. You're going to find out. It's going to be good for you. It's going to be fine. You're going to be great. But my point with this is that um, I, I, I have no need to try to convince anybody of it. I just try to be there for him. And I suffered. I guess really what I wanted to say. I live in this sort of knowledge of impermanence and non-attachment, but I still feel things. I still suffer the grief in the morning. It's not like I'm sort of some kind of inhuman.
Yeah.
But I live as witness. I just see the world from the inside of myself, from above myself. It's like I'm in an avatar, and I see and feel the world as an avatar would feel it, but I also know that I'm actually not in the body.
All right. What is your soul name? Can you tell us? Is that even
I
something
wish I could tell myself. I can't say it. I don't know. It's beyond language for me.
Yeah, that's weird, right? Because obviously you didn't have ears, so you don't have ears, so it's not a frequency that your brain is deciphering, right? It's something totally
I
different.
didn't have a brain.
Yeah. Fascinating. All right, well, let's get to some of these questions here. I see some good ones. The Happy Plague Doctor wants to know, do you still ice climb for the glory of Canada?
No, that was my first and last ice climb. I continued to backpack. I went backpacking all over, mostly the Northeast after that. But no, I haven't ice climbed since. But I still do winter sports. But no ice climbing. That's off the list.
And Vash was there. Do you still climb team rope or team boulder?
No, I boulder. I definitely boulder because I live near some bouldering. I still do that, but I'm 62, so I'm not as skilled as I used to be. But I'm still a sport guy. I still sporty.
That's an excuse, man.
Yeah. Oh, my ear back.
Yeah. All right. Vash wants to know. Wait, sorry, I already did that. Renee Martin says, "What keeps you grounded from wanting to be back there?"
Oh, I always want to be back there. I spent the first 20 years after praying for my death every single day. So I'm a Kriya yogi and a centering meditation practitioner for 40 years. And so I practice those things. And in addition to those, I practice the single prayer every day. Take me home today, God. Is today my day? Can I go home today? I made a mistake. I'm sorry I came back. So what eventually grounded me here are a couple things, several things. Additional mystical experiences that by the grace of the divine integrated me into my body more fully. And that I got kids. I got married. I got kids and a grandchild. And in 2015, I had a second near-death experience from a widowmaker heart attack, genetics. Thank you, family. And died on the way to the ambulance, on the way to the catheterization lab, in the ambulance. And chose to come back this time for my granddaughter, who really, really needed me.
So you went through the whole thing again?
Not quite the whole thing, but some of it, yeah.
Huh. So do you regret coming back?
Go ahead.
Do you regret it at times? You just like...
Oh, I regretted coming back here every single day of my life till 2015. Every day of my life. And yet so I lived in this conflict because my interior world is completely being called to the divine presence. I got a graduate degree in mysticism, and I studied contemplation in order to find my way home again. And so I pursued this with every ounce of my being. And yet the only thing I ever wanted to do was get out of here. But now I'm sticking around as long as I can for those who need me, because I know the length of my life is a wink of an eye. I'm out of here, and I got maybe 30 years left. And, will I come back again? I don't know if I can make a deal. If I can be a bodhisattva, I'll come back again. If I have any negotiation left up there, maybe I'll come back as that. But otherwise, all I want is divine union. I want the obliteration of self. I want the end of my being so that I can reunite with the oneness itself, which is bliss beyond comparison.
In order to reunite, sometimes you might have to come back over and over, like
I have come back a bunch already.
Live different lives, right? That's the whole reincarnation thing.
It is the whole reincarnation thing, and I don't know. I don't know how many lives I got left. I don't know. Maybe none. Maybe 1 million. I have no idea. But if I have a choice, I want to advance. That's what I want. I want the oneness of being. I want to be one.
All right. Go-Kart Bob wants to know: did the voice have a name?
Ineffable. There's this great list. If you Google the 99 names of God in Islam, it'll give you a list of 99 names. All of them are right, and none of them are. And the divine is so far beyond language that it's ineffable. But it is love itself, and that's just a word I pick to summarize it. But ineffable, no name, right. Nameless,
all right, awesome.
Unspeakable.
Sapphire Elf says, I say this every time. If energy equals matter, maybe matter manifests life to simply observe the physical universe. Maybe when we die, we became energy again in a cycle of everything.
Well, that's not inaccurate. We definitely become energy again that is observant. I could see the world. Yeah. I could see the universe, and I was energy. But not like electrons. It's energy is a metaphor also.
Yeah, that's true. And it seems like the body is so small, right? It's like you're just compacted into it.
Oh yes, I'm much, much smaller and so much more limited. I read recently that the human eye, the reason why we see the colors of the rainbow is because of the size of the cones, the length of the cones in our eyes. And if they were a little bit longer, like birds, we would see infrared light. Infrared? Is that right? Ultraviolet light. So our body defines our experience of the world, and it's no matter who we are, whether we're a red-tailed hawk who can see vole urine on the ground or a human being that can't, we're just as limited. And as long as I'm in a physical body, I am limited.
Yeah, well, that's the truth. Distorted Reality says, has Peter used any shrooms to help guide his emotions?
No, but I have. Well, yes. I mean, it's yes and no. Before I died, I took quite a number of LSD trips, and I've taken a couple of mushroom trips since then, but not for many decades. But I've spent the last couple of years reading around Johns Hopkins University's psilocybin studies and NYU's studies as well, and I find that the science is showing great application for lots of things, including transcendental experiences, post-traumatic stress disorder, end-of-life care, and lots of things. I find it an interesting field that I'm interested in.
All right. Vash wants to know, excuse me, question, has Peter ever... okay, so never mind. I guess that's the same question before with the, he says, have you ever done mushrooms before? If not, would he? And if he has, how does it compare to his NDE? So how would you...
I have an answer for that. Yeah. Okay, so when I was in high school, the year before this thing happened, a couple years before this thing happened, I was in high school, and I took a triple hit of purple microdot mescaline, which is 3 times the amount of the dose. And how I took it was sort of accidental, but I had a transcendental experience in which, so I'm on the ski patrol, and I'm working at this small hill outside of Boston, and I'm tripping my mind out, and I'm on my skis, and I'm on a back trail, and I'm like by myself because I'm first time I ever tripped, and I was way over my head. And suddenly I have this divine experience where the voice, capital V, speaks through like the trees and the snow and the sky and the sun and myself and my ski boots and my fingernails. And it says, I am here. I am that I am. And it's like everything is screaming at me. And I have this revelatory divine experience, which drives me. From then on, I become a meditator. So I learned centering prayer practice, and I become a meditator, and I dive inside myself, and I'm now this spiritual person. I had this transformative experience as a result of this transcendental experience. But after I died, I was like, that ain't nothing comparatively. Like, it was fulfilling and beautiful, but in comparison, it was on a scale of 1 to 1,000, it was a 1, and heaven was 1,000. So yes and no, but the John Hopkins studies are showing that, and I happen to know a guy who was in the John Hopkins transcendence study, and we've had quite a number of conversations. He had a divine experience of oneness of being and changed his entire life. So I know from personal experience, I know from generalized experience from my friends who've had these kinds of experiences too, and also from this one specific guy who was in the John Hopkins study, that in a controlled clinical setting, heroic doses can lead to a transcendent experience, but you have to be willing to walk into terror and darkness to make it happen. That's kind of the way it works.
Yeah, I did way too much mescaline once when I was young, and that's I've done that. I've done shrooms. Mescaline is kind of its own thing. I mean, that experience was like nothing I've ever had before or since. I literally thought I was dead, and I was trying to figure out who I was before I died, and I had no idea.
You lost yourself.
I had no idea who I was.
Yes.
All I knew is that I was dead, and that I was from Earth. I knew I was from Earth. That was it. That was all, and everything was just in and out, and like I pushed on my face, and I could change where I was, and it was weird, man. It was weird. All right, so Mary Kay says, does reincarnation into other lives and other beings exist?
I say yes. I saw my other lives. I can't see them now, and at the time I could only glimpse very subtly into them. I was shown. I shouldn't say I could glimpse into. I was shown into a little bit of a few of them, but yes, for sure. But none of them mattered. Like, I have lots of friends who are deep into trying to find out who they were in previous lives, which is cool. You want to do that? That's great. But as for me, I really don't care who I was in a previous life, because not one of them is me. I am my soul. I am my consciousness. I know that because my consciousness was 10,000 times larger than all of the lives I'd ever lived put together, or 1,000,000 times larger. And so I've spent my entire life not focusing on what I was or am in other time zones. I mean, because when I was dead, all these things were happening simultaneously. They look like all the lives were at the same time to me. None of them were the soul of myself. And so I have chosen to spend my life not in pursuit of what I once was, but rather what I always am. And what I always am is my divine self. And so which is why I went to graduate school to study mysticism, to find out were there other people like me in the history of the world? And if they figured out how to access this, can they teach me? And basically I came away with a very simple understanding, and that is from this guy named Meister Eckhart: the eye wherein God sees me, I see God. And so I spend my life polishing that lens to see myself, to see the divine self, to see the light itself. And the more I see of the divine light itself, the more I see myself, the more I see light in the world, the closer heaven comes to me here as I live my life.
Yeah. All right. Sapphire Elf says, I think reincarnation is an echo of other lived experiences, part of the universal constant. I am you, you are me, we are all one.
Maybe. I don't know. That's not what I saw, but I don't know all the answers. I'm not one to, I'm not one to speculate on what I don't know and what I haven't seen. That's so Sapphire Elf might be right.
Yeah, and then he says here,
I also know that I only have limited knowledge. I know that every single mystical experience, every single near-death experience, we only get limited knowledge, all of us, partial. There's much, much more that we don't know.
but we will know, right? I mean, is there
Yeah,
learning? Can you learn when you're over there? I mean, is there
I
anything to
did.
learn, or do you just know everything?
Well, it's not like studying a book. It's like it's more like all of the library of the Smithsonian, all of the Congressional Library downloads into you in a microsecond. That's learning. That's what happened to me with understanding the cosmos. Of course, I can't. I don't know it now because my brain's way too small. But all of my questions were answered. So yes to learning, but no to learning like we do here.
Yeah. All right. And Sapphire Elf also says, during his NDE, did he feel this universal force had a will, like an overachieving goal that manifested, perhaps a god, or is it all life the same god?
Oh, it was the will of love and beauty. Love and beauty and understanding and knowledge and desire and selflessness and compassion. All these things are oneness. They're not separate. They're all truth, bliss, paradise. They're all part of the oneness of being. And it was all, that was the will. The will is love.
All right. Stefan Godst says, I may have missed it, but where does Peter live? You're in Maine, right?
I live on the coast of Maine. Coast of Maine, yeah.
Right on the coast. You look at the ocean every day.
I see the ocean every day. I don't live on the water, but I live on the end of a peninsula, and on the end of the peninsula is a neck, and on the end of the neck is a point, and I live almost at the point, so I'm surrounded by water, but I don't live on the water now.
All right. Beautiful, right? It must be absolutely beautiful to see.
It's beautiful. It's like one of the things, when I came back, I was in one of the most beautiful places in the world. There's many beautiful places in the world. The world's a very big place, a very beautiful place. But Canada, Western Canada, is pretty darn gorgeous. But to me, it looked ugly, and because it was in comparison to the beauty of heaven. And so I've lived my life by aesthetics. I chose to live in a beautiful place if I could, because it feeds me. It reminds me of heaven.
Yeah. I've been up around the northwest of the U.S., up around in the rainforest up there in Washington, and it's just absolutely gorgeous.
Oh yeah, beautiful, big huge trees.
All right, so I don't know if you still have the questions up or the YouTube thing up here. I don't know if you can read these. I'm not even going to try to say them all. Srirachi says, "Have you heard of Aisha Sadhguru Dhyana Linga Bharava?" I don't have any idea what he's saying. I don't know if you can read that. I threw it.
I have heard of some gurus. I don't see that particular quote.
I put it right on the screen.
Let's see. Oh, well, wait a minute. Hold on. I see. I wasn't. Where are we? No, I guess I'm not seeing that. I just see the chat.
Oh, okay. All right. So.
I see it. Sadhguru. Yeah, I pay attention to Sadhguru a little bit. And Isha, I have a friend named Isha. I don't know if that's the same person. Dhyana Linga, I don't know. Linga Bharavi, I don't know. But Sadhguru, I'm familiar with. I've read a lot of Paramahansa Yogananda and the Yoga Sutras, a lot of Lao Tzu. Who is my guru? God is my guru. But I guess if as a human being, I'm most studied in the teachings of Jesus, but I'm not a devotee of anyone. I'm a devotee of the ineffable. I belong to the one who is unspeakable.
All right. Sapphire Elf says he did acid once and talked to a tree.
Oh yeah, that can happen.
I get no arguments with tree.
Right, exactly.
All right. So I guess they're chatting it up quite a bit now. I'm looking for some more questions. Okay, here we go from Vash. She says, when Peter was in the darkness and headed towards the dot of small light, did he hear any wind sounds or any sounds while in the tunnel traveling?
No. No sound. Just the voice of the angelic being, the divine, the being of light that was speaking comfort to me. Without language, like directly to my soul. Relax, chill, comfort, beauty, power, intellect. All these things spoken directly to me. It wasn't my intellect, by the way. It was like this incredible, the angelic being, the being of light was so smart. I don't know how to describe it other than that. It was just infinitely smarter than me, way more powerful than me, and providing me with direct comfort, but no wind sound. No.
Nothing.
Nope.
All right. I heard Mary Kay says, I heard that we reincarnate with the same people through our journey. Any thoughts on that?
I've heard people say that. I know I have people in my soul group, I guess I could say, and I know them when I meet them, and it turns out there's a lot of them are near-death experiencers, who are in my peer group, but I didn't have direct experience of that on the other side. My only experience of that is on this side, and so it's outside my heavenly knowledge. It's just my earthly knowledge.
All right. Vash says, did you find out the purpose behind living on Earth or any existence?
Love.
Love's
Folding
the purpose?
myself back into the divine being, bringing as much heaven here as possible. So it's not like I should be a neurosurgeon or a scallop fisherman. But either one of those is fine. What really matters is my compassion and my love and my caring. Those are the things that are the purpose of my life.
All right. Vash also wants to know, while you were looking at some of your past lives, were any of them, did you live as an animal?
I'll say no, but only because I'm not really sure what I was in some of these lives. I mean, there were I saw at least one or two where I was definitely not a human being, but I had I had consciousness, but I was not an animal. I don't know what I was, but I wasn't a human being.
Do you think it was maybe like an off-worldly creature?
Other dimension, other worlds,
Yeah,
other planet.
other planets.
Probably. I don't, but I wasn't allowed to see much.
All right. Well,
what I was really being shown was the proportion of the size of my everlasting soul compared to the size of the lives that I was living, and they were teeny tiny in comparison.
All right. Sriracha 1331 says, in your NDE, do you think you were accessing physical memory or more like accessing the cloud?
It's more like accessing the cloud. Because when I was in my hell of my own, it was like the hell of my own making. It wasn't physical memory. I was inside the experience of other people, which you could, is uploaded into the cloud, basically. But it was also the cloud being the divine self that sees all, knows all, is all. So I was inside of another life. So it wasn't my physical memory I was accessing, it was theirs. But in terms of understanding what I understood of the cosmos, the structure, the physics of the cosmos, that was definitely not a memory. That was accessing data that I have no access to now.
Well, yeah, if it's other people's experiences and emotions that you were feeling, I would imagine you were kind of like in their cloud.
I was in their cloud. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating to think that we have access to each other's thoughts and feelings and everything else, like when we pass, right?
Yeah. And but none of those things they were all prelude. Once that was over, they didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the divine self itself. the isness of the divine, the isness of the presence of the inexpressible love. Nothing else mattered to me. And people ask me, well, did you see your auntie or your grandma? No. And it didn't matter to me because all of them were present. All love was present. And that's all I needed.
All right. And Sapphire have a couple more questions here. He says, what does the guest think of V for Vendetta movie? God is in the rain. He is you. He is me. He's none of us, but all of us. I didn't realize would be a documentary of the world today.
Oh, the universe is secretly made of love with a capital L. The divine self is everywhere, all the time, in everything.
But there is evil out there, don't you think?
I think that there is.
Did you feel any evil?
Not when I was dead, no. Yeah. But I think that there is brokenness. I think that there is limitedness. And I think that human beings can perpetrate evil. I know they do.
Yeah, well, they sure do. Sapphire Elf says, does this force of love have an outcome?
An outcome? That's a fascinating question. An outcome.
Right? What would be the outcome of love? What's the goal?
More love. More love. So there's this great quote. I think it's James Joyce. Love loves to love love. And that is the summary of my soul journey. Love loves to love love. And the outcome of love is more love, expanding love.
All right. Distorted Reality says, have you ever seen a UFO?
Oh, yeah. I chased one once. This is 1977. That was the year I graduated high school. I got a job in Ohio as a camp counselor at a Catholic boys camp. And we were out one night with the camp car, and we were supposed to be roller skating at the roller rink, but we weren't. We bought beer and we had some weed, and we drove up to a hilltop. And I was the driver. I had the car, and I had 4 other guys with me who I didn't really know very well because we were new at camp. And just as we were about to light the bowl and pop open a 3.2 Bohemian beer, the whole parking lot illuminated. And I said, oh, geez, boys, it's the cops. We're busted. So let's get out of the car and give ourselves up. And so that's what we did. We got out of the car and we looked behind the car. There's no cop car behind us. And we all look up simultaneously, and the entire sky over us is filled with one huge white light. It was so bright. Everything was illuminated. And it was so big, it was like the size of a football field. And I had to look way, way, way down, trying to find the edge of this white light. It was a disc, and perfectly silent. And we're like, what is this? We're jumping around. Look at this. And I was like 18 years old. And it started to move, and it's completely silent, and there's no visible means of propulsion. And it kind of floats off like a balloon at tree level height. And we all hop back in the car and we drive down this hill. In this Ohio, it's totally flat except for this one hill on the river. And so we get down to this road, and I'm driving, and all the guys are hanging out the windows, and it's ahead of us. We throw all the beer out. We throw the pot out. We throw the pipe out. So we don't have anything in the car. And we're doing like 90 on this Ohio back road. And we follow it for like 3 or 4 miles, and it's just ahead of us. It's definitely like making us go as fast as we can, but not going so fast that it'll outrun us. And so we're doing about 90 miles an hour, and we get to a right-hand turn. And for anybody who's from Ohio, this was in Perrysburg, Ohio, and it's across on the Maumee River. It's at the intersection in Perrysburg where there's a bridge that goes into Maumee. It's a right angle. And so we get to this is what it was, 30, 40 years ago, not like it is now. So we get to this right angle turn where the road turns to the right to go across the river. And this thing doing 90 miles an hour makes a right angle turn and never decelerates. It's the wildest physics I have ever seen in my life. And we go blowing by right underneath. We're like, what was that? Did you see that? And so I slam on the brakes, and I spun the wheel, and I go into this guy's poor farmer's cornfield, and I wipe out his spring. It was like June or July. And, I knock down a bunch of his corn stalks, and I turn the car around, and I get back up on the road again. And It's waiting for us about a half a mile ahead of us, and I floor it, and it's just sitting above the treetops. It's ginormous, and it's white light, and it's just sitting above the treetops. And as we get close to it, it shoots off through the atmosphere, out of the atmosphere, faster than anything I'd ever seen. It was a streak of light, and it was gone. And so, yeah, definitely. And so then I made a little video of it. It's on my YouTube channel. After the Pentagon came out a couple of years ago, 5 years ago now, with their UFO stories, we've been tracking them as a nation. I was like, oh, if the Pentagon's talking about it, I can finally talk about it. And I lost track with the guys who were in the car with me, but they saw the video and they've been back in touch with me, so that's kind of a completion for me. But yes, definitely seen a UFO. Yeah,
it's amazing the people that I guess our older generations have lost touch with over our lives, whereas today, the kids today, they can friend somebody on Facebook, they'll be friends with them forever.
Yeah,
it's
a very different world.
Yeah, back in the day, we'd have some of our best friends we'd just lose touch with or whatever. We'd never get to see him again.
Yep.
All right, Hugo Darn.
I see Distorted Reality. Peter sounds like he was into heavy metal in the 80s and had long hair. I definitely had long hair, but I was a hippie.
All right. Hugo Darn wants to know, did he see the solar system?
I did. I saw the galaxy. I saw a bunch of galaxies.
That's awesome, isn't it?
Yep.
The closest thing to think of that I could say I saw the solar system was during the eclipse. I was doing I actually got right into whatever the darkness, I forget what they call it, but I was right in there for 2.5 minutes. And man, you could see all the planets. It's so weird being in an eclipse because it's like this just watching golf balls in the air. It's so fascinating. If you haven't been in totality, that's what I'm wanting to say. If you haven't been in totality during an eclipse, do it. There's another one coming like from Maine down to Arkansas or something. I suggest you get in it. 2 minutes, but it's the most awesome 2 minutes you can ever experience.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
I'm a habitual stargazer. Where I live, we have very little light pollution, so I'm out looking at the stars all the time. That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, you got to get in totality. If you've never seen totality during an eclipse, do it, because it's the most unreal thing you can ever see. All right, Sapphire Elf says, has his experience led to a more open acceptance of other paranormal phenomenon, and has experienced any other strange encounters like ghosts or shadow people, etc.?
Yes, to both of those things. I don't know if they're shadow people, but demonic sort of two-dimensional thing, and a couple of ghosts. I got a couple of ghost stories. I'm a stilt walker, and I do parades because it's fun. And so I did a parade upriver from me in Damerscott at the Pumpkin Festival, and a couple years before, a Shriner. Do you guys know what a Shriner is, Michael?
Yeah,
they're like so he's a Shriner on go-karts with the little fezzes. Well, he's going across this small bridge in the saltwater river, short saltwater river between these two towns, and he flips his cart and he dies in the parade in front of everybody. Smacks his head open, bleeds to death. And so I'm going across. A couple of years later, I'm going across the bridge. But before I get there, I have to say that my stilts needed repair before I got to the parade, and I couldn't get the right size gauge. Couldn't get the right gauge of bolt that I needed, and so I got the next gauge down, figuring, I can get one parade out of this. I'll be fine. So I retool my stilts with this smaller gauge bolt. And as I'm going across the bridge, I see a couple of my neighbors, and I do this kind of fancy high-speed spin jump thing. And as I come down on my right stilt, the bolt shears, and I've got all this momentum going forward, and my stilt breaks, and as I feel myself going forward, and I'm on the edge of the bridge, and there's a raging river below me, I see myself pop out of my body, and I see myself falling toward the river, and I'm like, and I'm gonna drown because I got stilts on my legs, and there's no way I could swim in this thing. And so as this happens, I also, such a weird experience, I pop out of my body behind myself, and I see this gray amorphous cloud right behind me. And instead of going forward over the bridge, I suddenly go straight down to the bridge. So all my momentum, which was pushing me toward going over the edge, over the railing, I suddenly drop straight down to the bridge, and I'm like lying on the ground. And I had these two buddies who were there. This one guy who's my age and one guy who's my son's age, and they saw this was going to happen. And they were ready. They were like, one was on one side of the bridge and one was on the other side of the bridge. They were ready to dive into the river after me. Everybody's in a panic. Everybody's screaming. And I'm okay. So I raise my hand. I'm all right. I get off my stilts. I sprained my ankle in the process. And I limp back to my car with my buddy, to his car with my buddy. And my phone rings. And it's this woman who is a PhD, Columbia University biologist, with she's a paramedic on the side, and she died in a car wreck when she was hit by a car on her bike, like in '92, broke all the bones in her body. That kind of terrible thing. Recovered, but terrible thing. And she sees dead people, and that I counseled her for a year over this. And so she calls me on the phone and she says, "So this guy just showed up in my apartment." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "This dead guy just showed up in my apartment." I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, he said to tell you that he didn't mean it. He was trying to help you." And it was the Shriner. And he shoved me to the ground instead of me going over the edge. That's my little ghost story.
All right. Let's see here. Hugh Godarn wants to know, did you see the Tree of Life?
Not as a tree, no. I mean, I know some near-death experiencers who see a tree of life. I didn't see that. I experienced all life, I guess, with a capital A and a capital L, the all life, but not the tree of life, no.
All right. Sapphire Elf says, last question, I suppose. What's your definition of the direct polar opposite of love?
Fear.
Fear. There you go, Sapphire. All right. All right. So there we go. All right. So last question of the night. Do you know who Corn Pop is?
I do not know who Corn Pop is, but you got to tell me. Who's Corn Pop?
Corn Pop is a bad dude. That's the answer.
Okay. All right.
It's a Biden thing.
All right. I don't know.
All right. You have to ask Google, who is Corn Pop? Google will tell you.
I'll go, hey, Siri. I shouldn't say that because she'll answer right now.
Hugh Godarn wants you to take him on a climbing trip one day.
I'll go backpacking with you, but I don't think I'm not going to be doing much climbing.
All right. Well, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Sure. You can find me at peterpanagore.love, peterpanagore.love, and I got a YouTube channel called Not Church. I explore mysticism and try to help deprogram theology so that people can be decolonize their minds. So Not Church on YouTube and peterpanagore.love.
Yeah, we're going to have to. We're going to have
I have a specialty in counseling for near-death experiencers and mystical experience. And I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Michael.
No, that's all right. I was just going to say we need to get you on the show again, and this time we can spend more time talking about some other things that you seem to have interest in that we could probably probe your mind about. You know, being that we've gotten all this taken care of.
Cool. I'd love that.
So
thanks for having me.
Sounds like fun. All right, guys, the link down is in the description box below. You know where it is. Hang on a second, Peter, and I'll chat with you a bit as soon as I wrap things up here. Just want to let everybody know that they can find us always at www.conflictradio.net. YouTube is where we do the live streaming. I'm getting a lot of questions as to like where the heck I do the live stream, because we're on YouTube Mondays, Thursdays, 7:30 Eastern time. It's normally we're not doing a show this Thursday. It is Thanksgiving, but I did actually get a guest for Wednesday, so we'll be back here Wednesday night. I actually have a guest coming on that I met here in the Rocket City, Huntsville, Alabama, and I'm going to be getting him on. It should be a pretty interesting show. We're going to talk about he's a trucker, and we're going to talk about some of the port backlogs and stuff, and we're just going to have an interesting show, chatting with just a normal truck driver, and what his experiences on the road are. So that should be fun for everybody. Just give us something to do on Wednesday. Remember, you can always find us on Spreaker, Apple iTunes, and all of your normal podcast catchers. Remember, everybody, batten down the hatches. And batten down the hatches and
some aircraft that were clearing. Talks about some